everyone. Welcome back to what's happening in real estate this week. I've got Conrad Zarini here with Remax Escarpment, Remax Niagara. He is actually at Inman right now. Is it New York City, Conrad?
Yeah, New York City. See?
Oh, there he is. He's in New York City. This guy is awesome. This guy does not miss this if he can't.
Never.
If he doesn't want to miss it. I love it. We got Brian Hogben here with Mission 35 Mortgages. There's a couple of things we're going to talk about today. Old Real Estate Folder reveals a treasure trove of memories and a path forward. Here's what we can expect when comparing 2025 to home sales in 1990. And now I became a realtor like in 1999, 2000, or actually 1999. Now the 90s. Housing downturn lasted until 2014 to recover pre-downturn values. I don't believe that. I think things started climbing in around 2000, 2001. I don't know if you guys agree with me, or is it 2014?
Well, 97, I think we started to see in Toronto, and I think it worked its way to our area, probably 99 to 2000. So you're correct, right in and around that time, 100%.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And it says the market crash factors in the 90s, rising interest rates, overheated market, reduced foreign investment, high personal debt, and regulatory changes. Current market shares only two similarities with the 90s, high household debt, foreign investment, and restrictions. Despite economic challenges, today's market is more stable with proactive government intervention. You guys agree or not?
Yeah, I think with the government intervention, what we learned in the 90s is that it took, I was reading an old proposal from, someone from CMHC in the early 90s, and they proposed in 1990 to increase the affordability to 95%. They wanted CMHC to start financing homes up to 95%. And it was introduced in 1982. So from 1982 to 1999, it took 17 years to change a 5% down payment regulation, right? So when you look at the difference today, we're changing mortgage regulation all the time now.
Yeah, regularly.
We changed it a bunch when we were 2008, 2009, we went up to 40-year RAMs. Then we brought them back down to 25. Now we've increased them again to 30 years. So I think our government intervention on mortgage regulation, they understand that that's a powerful lever now, and they're moving it way quicker than they ever have in the past.
And I think when you look at the, we've talked about this before. I think the stress test, I think when they monkey around with it too much, the stress test, we had a lot of people sit on the sidelines for 18 months to 2 years, getting their heads around the stress test. And then when rates dropped, they all jumped in. And then you saw the increase. Like when you compare the two periods of time, the identical periods of time after 2008, when there was a crisis in the US, we came through it quite nicely. Okay. And then things started to build up. But what happened was, when they introduced in 2018, the stress test took us a while, again, bringing back demand, and then demand whoosh. And then we saw all that price increase in 2021, way higher than the price increases in the US where I'm right now. So, and now there's more Canadians underwater than there are Americans are not underwater in mortgages anymore, because they didn't have that pent up demand that was caused by government intervention. So I don't know. I think we had better, we could really keep an eye on the market. Like, I know there's been some stuff, and I know you love some of the stuff, Brian, but those periods you talked about, we had very stable environments after those high interest rates in the 80s, right?
There are a lot of power sales that are happening right now, and that's not publicized too much, but there is a lot, like the banks, I think more like B lenders that are people that have first mortgages.
Way more B and private. The A lender power sale right now is actually I think we're still below pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Right. So you're looking at still 5-year lows, right? When it comes down to, they are increasing, but you're absolutely right, Rob. Dude. It's the people that were typically over leveraged, regardless of market, that are hitting those power sales.
Well, and going back to, I think them monkeying around with the market, right? Monkeying around with these rules, it really pushed people to that private, wouldn't you say, Brian? And private right now is the highest default rate of all time, and in the entire history of Canada. More people have to go to private and B because of these restrictive rules, and now it's forced them into a bad position, right? Because Canadians want to buy. Don't underestimate the Canadian buyer, right? They're a forceful bunch.
Yeah, and I think, when people look to get an exit strategy going from that private lender to a B or an A lender, when that strategy doesn't work out, that
Mm.
borrower's on borrowed time
Yeah.
because they might have been, losing a little bit of money or paying a little bit extra than they thought. But then if they're not able to exit that loan, to your point, Rob, that's where you're going to see the power sale increase because the
Yeah.
exit strategy didn't work.
Wow. Yeah, you know what? Because we just received one, and I was talking to the guy, and he was telling me, he goes, there is a lot of power sales, and they're expecting more next year because people are just barely hanging on now, but they're expecting a lot more. This coming year and even next year that'll happen because look what happened to Eaton's, right? I mean, in the early '90s they were on the verge of bankruptcy, but how many years did it take before the banks were just feeding these guys for another 4 years, 5 years before they said, we can't help you anymore. You guys are so deep in debt that the banks would lose money. Am I correct on that story there, Conrad? Like, how Eaton's, I mean, they were like, they got affected through the '90s recession and they hung on as long as they could, but there was a certain time that they had to throw in the towel.
Oh, totally. Because but the interesting thing about that time, there was no growth, right? And there was people that bought, during the peak in the '80s, in the late '80s, but there was no growth in those '90s. They just hung on. But rates were pretty stable during that whole period. And the other thing too is, and again with that article, our employment picture is much better than it was back then. For sure. And to me, employment is a driver for prices to drop. Like, better than I do, Rob, too. You're on the streets. You can see prices have not dropped dramatically in these last few years. It's been pretty stable. But when you have unemployment, high unemployment, people can't pay mortgages, like we did, again, early '80s when mortgages were so high, people couldn't pay those 19 and 20%. All they had to do was hold on for like 18 months and they would have been fine. This one is just a little bit longer. Right? In terms of that. Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I remember I was working at this place, and there was an older guy. He was buying properties when it was 18, 19%.
Mm-hmm.
This guy knew the system. And like the wealth this guy created just by buying properties so cheap because people were letting go. And and obviously interest rates went down and the values of properties went up. So I remember, I'll never forget this guy. He was telling me he's buying these properties and he was buying them at high interest rates, and he wasn't scared. Well,
let me tell you, I'll tell you a funny little story. There was a special key, like we didn't have lock boxes at the time. There was a special key that had keys in it, that had the keys for the house. It was CMHC that took the homes. So you had to get this special little key, you had to get certified by CMHC, and then you could go and guys like that were going, house to house and just putting in offers. But like I said, it was CMHC, and we haven't seen CMHC. I don't know about you, Brian, but I haven't seen a CMHC power sale or that kind of thing at all. Zero. But back in that period of time, it was rampant, and they even had their own key to get in their own properties. That's how many they had.
No kidding. Yeah. Wow. So over here, he's got prediction. Bank economists predicted a bleak future in the '90s, right? Similar to today's media narratives, and in forecasted Bank of Canada rate of 2.5% for 2025. It's not going to go down to 2.5%. What's your thoughts on that, Brian? Like, and it says could drive up demand. Oh, this could drive up demand property values, but we're not going to see 2.5%, are we?
No, well, you know what? You got to and make sure people understand there's the Bank of Canada rate, and then there's the prime lending rate. Okay. So the Bank of Canada rate that people end up putting out is always much lower. So I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think, we've got a 75% chance of a quarter point drop next week, right? Mm-hmm. Easier to predict the closer we are. I still think we're going to probably see another quarter to half a point throughout the balance of this year. But that's not going to bring us down to the 2.5%. I think the other wild card, and Conrad, you can let us know when you talk to Trump down there, what's going to happen? Is if there are tariffs introduced, what we're seeing right now, which is an interesting phenomenon, is we're seeing a radical amount of people refinancing their home in order to take out equity who are in tariff-related industries.
Yeah.
They're saying, listen, my job might be severely affected. I'm going to take out an extra 50 grand, 75 grand, 100 grand in case I'm not working in like 3 to 6 months. There is actually some real fear around that right now.
So talking about tariffs, so the paper mills or whatever, the paper that was printing our magazine, it's from the US. So I sat down with the printer and he's saying, look, I think we should go with a paper from Quebec. The pigment of the ink with this paper, it's not as sharp as the American paper that we were getting, but he goes, with the tariffs that are happening, he's saying, I think we should just go with that route. Like, I think he had to buy paper. He had to make a commitment for paper
probably.
for the year, right?
Probably, yeah.
And he didn't want to make a commitment with the US company because he doesn't, it's on shaky grounds, right?
Yeah.
So basically he made the commitment with a Quebec company that for the paper. And so right there, just with me alone, in this printing company, they're already scared. Like, can you imagine like many different companies out there that could be affected? They're going to put some businesses out of business because if they do implement this tariff pretty strongly.
Well,
It's the uncertainty now. I think that's driving this, don't you think? I think that, and it's interesting to hear that people are planning for it. Jamie Dimon came out today and said, "Guys, calm down. Don't worry about it. There's some silver linings to all this." I think we're all thinking the worst, and February 1st is right around the corner, and we'll see what happens. And the last time Trump did it wasn't that long, and I think he's trying to get that NAFTA deal or the North American deal on the table much
I think
faster.
they're calling it an economic union now, an economic union.
So I would, they want us to buy more milk from the U.S.
That's it.
And they want us to get rid of those quotas. And which is artificially has the price of milk high in Canada. I think there's some silver lining. So believe it or not, you're going to see some stuff shake out that could work in the long run for Canadians. Mm-hmm.
One question: wouldn't it be easier for the Bank of Canada to just drop the rate where they want to go to the final number now, instead of doing this gradual thing and get things rolling? Like right now, buyers are still sitting and waiting for the next month, waiting for that interest rate drop, the next month. If they want the economy to get rolling, wouldn't they just say, okay, this is going to be the final number this year. Let's just do it and let's get it done now. Am I wrong in saying that? Or is there a reason for doing the slow process?
Well, this is because they practice. There's I can't remember the economist, but it's the psychology of this. Like they're constantly polling businesses and people all the time, and really this is more like a psychology thing. And this is how they can, the big people feel, I'm going to wait and wait and wait, so I'm not going to jump in now. Other people have to do it. They're going to. So this is how they kind of take air in and out of the market. It's more of a mind game, I believe, than anything else, than getting to that neutral rate. But I'm with you. It would be nice to know, but again, that's the beauty of the market, and that's the beauty of entrepreneurialism, right? We can take advantage of, when things are in this situation and help consumers out a little bit. But this is definitely a psychology game with with the Fed and with the Bank of Canada, for sure.
I would agree with that too, Conrad, because I think, like, to your point, Rob, if you dropped it too much, you'd still have people sitting on the fence going, see, I told you it's really bad. We got to wait even more. It's going to be worse. And then you'd probably have all the smart money be like, woo, buy a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you have a huge wealth gap disparity, right? Because it takes a while for that herd mentality to be adopted. And if you drop them too fast, too quick, people will still be like, is that enough? Is it still going to go? They still wouldn't buy it, I don't think.
They wait for another one and another one, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So hey, Conrad, Inman, what's happening there with what's their predictions? What's going on?
They're talking about an increase in sales, unit sales, definitely, and they're seeing pricing, because here it's funny, they have low inventory in the U.S. It's a real low inventory market here. You got to think that in 2023 they did like 5 million sales, and in 2024 they did 4 million sales. But when you take the aggregate volume, dollar volume, it's pretty much at par, if not higher than it was last year, the dollar volume, because prices have increased due to low inventories here. The market, there's a lot of optimism. You know what they're talking about here a lot? Cleanup in the industry. Those part-time people, all that kind of stuff. They're really talking about that a lot, and professionalism and transparency, and that's and we'll start to see that in our market. We're always about 6 to 8 months behind, so a lot of those discussions around that.
Awesome. So, Brian, anything happening in the mortgage industry, or is it still except the announcement next week, or anything going on, or anything? Any new changes?
Yeah, just the one where it comes down to we just saw that rule come up where you can take 90% out of your home right now. That's actually a big thing too, to see CMHC allow 90% refi, so long as you're adding in a secondary suite. So that just came into effect, which is cool. I think that's also a possible signal that CMHC and the government is open to extending these mortgage rules again, because it's been, since 2008, it's been 16 years since we've seen these restrictions, right?
Right.
So since we've seen them kind of open up. So I think that's good. And we're seeing a lot of pre-approval traction as well, too. And the renewals are coming in hot and heavy right now.
Yeah, they must be.
Just as predicted. I think, Conrad, you mentioned this before. As soon as January 1, everybody was like, I got to talk about my mortgage renewal right now. So it's a very, very common thing. And I think you're going to see that in the resale market now, because my rate's expired. So now do I want to move, or do I want to refi and stay? Now it's a real conversation.
Awesome.
Totally.
Awesome. Well, guys, listen, I appreciate you being on, and anybody that's watching this, like us and share and keep updated on what's happening in real estate this week. Conrad, I can't wait to hear some of the stuff you're going to find out at Inman. And Brian, we'll see you guys all next week. Thanks for being on.
Week.
Take care.
Ciao.
Thanks, guys.